Amora was a woman who had everything that people in the city thought was important. She had tall buildings that carried her name, businesses that brought her more money each day, and cars that shined brighter than the sun. When she walked into a room, people stood, bowed, and spoke with careful smiles. They praised her beauty, her success, and her power. But Amora's heart was not at peace. Deep inside, she felt lonely. She had friends, yes, but she knew their laughter was not true. She knew they came close only because of her wealth. Their eyes always searched for what she could give, not who she was. At night, when her mansion was quiet and the noise of the city was far away, Amora would sit by her window and look outside. She would watch the poor people walking home, holding hands, smiling, or laughing with nothing but their love. She thought about them more than her gold jewelry and soft chairs. She whispered to herself many times, "Who would love me if I had nothing? Who would care for me if I were just a simple woman?" These questions did not leave her heart. One morning, Amora decided she could no longer live with doubt. She wanted to test the world. She wanted to step out of her mansion, not as Amora the billionaire lady, but as a woman with no name and no money. She wanted to know if kindness still lived in the streets of the city. So she began to plan. She went to her wardrobe, where clothes of every color and price hung neatly. She pushed them aside until she found old, forgotten dresses from years ago. She tore them with scissors, rubbed dust on them, and made them look dirty. She hid her rings, her necklaces, and her shining earrings in a box. She covered her face with a scarf and wore slippers that were broken. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she almost did not recognize her reflection. She looked poor. She looked like someone who had nothing. Her driver knocked at the door, waiting to take her out as always. But Amora opened the door herself and told him, "You will not drive me today." He was confused, but she gave no explanation. She walked past the mansion gates, her feet touching the dust of the street for the first time in years. The city felt different without her car windows between her and the people. She heard the noise of traders calling, the cry of children, and the sound of engines fighting for space on the road. She felt the sun's heat pressing down on her back. No one looked at her with respect. No one bowed. No one called her madam. People brushed past her like she was nothing. Amora walked for hours, trying to feel the life she had never lived. She saw women selling fruit, men pushing wheelbarrows, and children running without shoes. She saw tired faces and hungry stomachs, but she also saw laughter shared over the smallest piece of bread. She thought, "These people are poor, yet they smile more than I do." By evening, Amora grew tired. She sat on the roadside near a group of beggars. For the first time, she sat among people who had no homes. One woman looked at her and asked, "Are you new here?" Amora nodded slowly. The woman gave her a piece of roasted corn and said, "You must be hungry." Amora was shocked. This woman had almost nothing, yet she shared. Amora chewed the corn, her heart heavy and light at the same time. She had eaten food prepared by the best chefs, served on golden plates, but none of those meals touched her heart the way this simple corn did. As the night grew colder, Amora lay on the ground with the others. The smell of dust filled her nose, and the hard floor pressed against her back. For the first time, she felt the pain of those who had no bed. But she also felt close to something real. While she closed her eyes, she thought again about her reason. She was not here to suffer for long. She was here to see if kindness, honesty, and true love could still be found in the world. She wanted to meet people who did not know her name, her money, or her mansion. She wanted to see if anyone would treat her as a person and not as a purse of wealth. The night passed slowly, with noises of rats and cars in the distance. Amora woke up at dawn, her body aching, but her spirit awake. She whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning. I must keep going. Somewhere out there, I will find the truth." So Amora stood up, brushed the dust from her torn dress, and walked deeper into the city. Her journey had begun, not as a billionaire, but as a homeless girl searching for true kindness. Would the world show her cruelty or compassion? She did not know. But she was ready to find out. Amora soon learned that life on the streets was not a simple game of disguise. It was a world that tested the body and the heart. The first days were the hardest. She was used to sleeping on a soft bed covered with blankets, but now she lay on hard cement floors that felt like ice at night. The ground gave her no comfort. She curled her body tightly, listening to the noises around her, dogs barking, car horns, footsteps of strangers, and sometimes the sharp voice of a drunk man shouting in the distance. Each sound made her alert. Each shadow reminded her that she was no longer safe behind the high gates of her mansion. In the mornings, Amora's body felt heavy. Her clothes smelled of dust, and her hair lost its shine. She was hungry most of the time. Sometimes she begged for food, but many people ignored her. Some looked at her with pity, others with disgust. She learned that being poor meant being invisible to most people. No one cared who she was or what her story might be. But not everyone was cruel. On her second day, while sitting near the market, an old woman who sold oranges noticed her tired face. The woman tore a piece of bread in half and handed one piece to Amora. "Eat, child," she said gently. Amora was touched. The bread was dry, but it was given with kindness. That kindness filled her heart more than the bread filled her stomach. Amora began to see small lights in the darkness of the streets. Poor women who had little still found ways to share. Children who had nothing but laughter still smiled at her. She realized that kindness often came from those who had the least. One hot afternoon, when the sun burned the streets and people hid in the shade, Amora sat quietly under a tree, her stomach empty. She had not eaten since the small piece of bread the day before. Her eyes felt heavy, but her heart refused to give up. That was when she met him. Chinedu was a young mechanic. His hands were covered in grease, and his shirt was torn in places. He pushed a small cart filled with tools, moving slowly down the road. As he passed, he noticed Amora sitting with her head down. Something in her look caught his heart. He stopped and asked, "Sister, are you hungry?" Amora lifted her eyes, surprised that someone had spoken to her kindly. She nodded softly, too weak to answer with words. Chinedu reached into his bag and pulled out a wrapped meal, rice with beans and a piece of meat. He placed it in her hands. "Here, eat. Don't worry, I have more," he said with a smile. Amora stared at the food, then at him. Her throat tightened. She had expected laughter, insults, or silence, but instead, she had found generosity. She whispered, Why are you giving this to me?" Chinedu shrugged. "Because you are hungry. And if I can help, why should I not?" Tears filled Amora's eyes. She had been given gifts far greater in her life, cars, jewelry, land. But this simple meal, offered by someone who worked with his hands and had little, felt like the greatest gift of all. She ate slowly, each bite heavy with gratitude. After she finished, she thanked him. Chinedu sat on the ground beside her, wiping sweat from his forehead. They began to talk. Amora listened to his voice, steady and full of hope despite his struggles. He told her about his life, how he worked long hours fixing cars, saving small coins to support his younger siblings. He did not complain. He spoke with pride about his hard work, and about his dream of opening his own workshop one day. Amora listened closely. She was used to men who bragged about wealth and power, but Chinedu spoke about family, responsibility, and dreams. His words were simple, yet strong. For the first time in a long while, Amora felt peace sitting beside someone. The hours passed quickly as they talked. Chinedu never asked about her past, never questioned why she was on the street. He only saw her as a person, not as a beggar. That surprised her more than anything. Most people on the street looked through her like she was invisible, but Chinedu looked at her as though she mattered. Before he left, Chinedu said, "If you are still here tomorrow, I will bring you more food." His smile was warm, not forced. Amora nodded, unable to stop her own smile from appearing. When he walked away, pushing his cart of tools, Amora sat quietly, holding the memory of his kindness close to her heart. For the first time since she left her mansion, she felt she had met someone real. Someone who gave without wanting anything in return. That night, as she lay again on the cold ground, Amora thought of Chinedu's words and his actions. She realized that while life on the streets was full of pain, it also carried the beauty of kindness that money could not buy. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "This is why I came here. This is what I wanted to see." And deep inside, Amora felt a spark of hope. Perhaps the world still had people who loved and cared not for wealth, but for humanity itself. Amora kept returning to the little corner of the city where she had first met Chinedu. Each time, he welcomed her with the same warm smile. He never looked down on her, never asked her painful questions about why she lived on the streets. To him, she was simply a person worth talking to, someone with feelings and thoughts. For Amora, this was new. She had lived a life surrounded by people who bowed to her wealth, who measured her worth by her riches. But with Chinedu, she was seen, not her money. At first, she was cautious. She feared that even this kindness might fade if he ever discovered who she really was. So she stayed silent about her identity. She wore the same old clothes, ate the same shared bread, and slept in the same corners of the street. But in her silence, she found peace. Chinedu often brought her food. Sometimes it was a simple plate of rice, other times a small loaf of bread with groundnut. He never gave her out of pity, but out of care. "You must eat to have strength," he would say. Amora would smile softly, touched by his thoughtfulness. As the days passed, they began to talk more. Chinedu told her about his life as a mechanic. He explained how he learned the work from his late father, fixing broken cars in a small shed. His father had passed away early, leaving him to care for his mother and two younger brothers. "I want to open a proper workshop one day," he said one afternoon, wiping grease from his hands. "Not just for myself, but for boys on the street who need skills. If they can work with their hands, they won't have to beg." Amora listened closely, her heart moved. She had heard businessmen in her world speak of profits, contracts, and power. But here was a young man whose dream was not for himself alone, but for others. His voice carried no pride, only sincerity. One day, as they sat under a tree, Amora asked, "Why do you care so much about helping others?" Chinedu smiled. "Because I know what it feels like to have nothing. If someone had not helped me when I was younger, I might not be here today. Kindness is like water, it flows and keeps life alive. I want to be that water for someone else." Amora's eyes filled with tears, though she quickly hid them. She had spent years surrounded by luxury, yet she had never heard words so pure. His kindness was not heavy with conditions. It was light, like a song that soothed her heart. Slowly, Amora began to open up to him, not about her wealth, but about her feelings. She told him how lonely she often felt, how people around her sometimes pretended to care but only wanted something in return. Chinedu listened quietly, nodding as though he understood. "You are not alone anymore," he said simply. "I am here." Those words sank deep into Amora's soul. No one had ever told her that before, not without expecting something. She realized she was beginning to trust him in a way she had never trusted anyone. The bond between them grew. They laughed together, shared stories, and sometimes sat in silence, enjoying each other's company. For Amora, it was the first time she felt free to be herself without fear. She did not have to pretend to be strong or perfect. She was just Amora, a woman who wanted love and peace. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, they sat watching children play with an old ball on the street. Amora asked him, "Chinedu, what would you do if you suddenly had a lot of money?" He thought for a moment, then laughed softly. "First, I would buy tools and open my workshop. Then I would help train boys who want to learn. And maybe, I would build a small school where poor children can study for free. Money should not just stay in pockets. It should move, it should change lives." Amora's heart beat faster. She realized that even if she told him who she really was, his answer would not change. He was not a man driven by greed, but by purpose. Still, she stayed quiet about her true life. She wanted this bond to grow on honesty of the heart, not on the shadow of her riches. For the first time, she knew what it meant to be valued for her spirit, not her possessions. Days turned into weeks. Each meeting deepened their connection. Amora often found herself waiting eagerly for the sound of Chinedu's cart rolling down the road. His presence was like light breaking through her disguise of poverty. She forgot she was a billionaire in torn clothes. She felt simply like a woman who had found a friend, maybe something even deeper. At night, lying on the hard ground, she thought of him. His voice, his laughter, his dreams, they echoed in her mind and warmed her heart. She wondered if this was the true love and kindness she had been searching for all along. The city around them remained busy and loud, but within their small circle, there was peace. Amora's disguise had led her to something she never expected, a bond stronger than wealth, a connection built on respect, trust, and care. And though she still carried her secret, she knew one thing for certain, her life was already changing because of Chinedu. The evening was quiet, and the city streets had grown softer as the sun began to set. Chinedu and Amora sat beneath the old tree where they often met. The children had finished their play and gone home, and the air was filled with the sound of distant voices and the gentle hum of crickets. Chinedu had been silent for a long time, his eyes studying her face. Finally, he asked the question that had been pressing in his heart for weeks. "Amora," he said slowly, "why are you living on the streets? You are not like the others. Your words, your way, it is different. Who are you really?" Amora froze. Her heart began to race. She had hoped this moment would not come so soon. She had hoped that she could keep her truth hidden, at least until she was sure. But now the question stood between them, demanding an answer. She looked down at her worn dress, her hands trembling as she played with the rough edge of the fabric. For a long time, she said nothing. Chinedu waited, patient but firm, his eyes filled with quiet curiosity. At last, she lifted her head. Her eyes were wet with unshed tears. Chinedu, she whispered, I have not been honest with you. I am not truly homeless. I came here in disguise. Chinedu blinked, confused. Disguise? She nodded. Slowly, she began to pull back the scarf that hid her face and slipped off the old coat she always wore. Beneath the layers of dirt and rags was a woman of beauty and elegance. Her posture, her grace, even her skin now showed a glow that was hidden before. Amora stood and faced him, her voice trembling. My name is Amora, she said, her words heavy with fear. I am the owner of many businesses. I live in a mansion not far from here. The city knows me as one of the wealthiest women. I dressed as a poor girl because I wanted to know if there is anyone who could care for me, not for my money, but for my heart. Chinedu's eyes widened in shock. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked at her, truly looked at her, as if trying to connect the pieces of the woman he thought he knew with the woman standing before him. You, he stammered, you are that Amora? The one with cars, companies, and workers. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes. I am that Amora. And I was afraid to tell you. Afraid that you would turn away, or worse, change how you see me. The silence between them was heavy. Amora's heart pounded painfully, every second stretching longer than the last. She thought of all the men who had praised her only because of her riches, all the people who had bowed low but never cared for her soul. She feared Chinedu would now look at her with those same eyes. Finally, he stood. His gaze was strong, steady. You lied to me, he said softly, not with anger, but with hurt. All this time, I thought you were like me, someone who fought with the dust and hunger every day. And now, I see you are one of the richest women in this land. Amora's voice broke. I did not mean to lie, Chinedu. I only wanted to know if someone could see me without my riches. I am sorry. She bowed her head, her hands twisting together in fear. Chinedu took a step closer. For a moment, she thought he would walk away. Her heart nearly stopped. But then, in the quiet of the evening, his words came clear and firm. You are still the same person I respect, he said. The woman who sat here and listened to my dreams, the woman who laughed with the children, the woman who cared when others did not. That truth cannot change because of money or wealth. I see your heart, Amora, not your riches. Her breath caught in her chest. She looked up, and in his eyes, she saw no greed, no envy, no fear, only honesty. For the first time in years, she felt free. The tears she had held back now flowed, not of fear, but of relief. Chinedu reached out, not for her gold or her name, but for her hand. His grip was warm, steady. I will not pretend, he continued. This truth shocks me. It will take time to understand. But I cannot forget what I have already seen in you. And if you still wish for my friendship, I will stay. Amora could not speak. She only nodded, her voice lost in emotion. That night, the world around them felt different. She had revealed her deepest secret, and instead of turning away, Chinedu had chosen to remain. The bond they had built was tested by truth, but it did not break. Amora sat beside him again under the tree, no longer as a homeless girl in disguise, but as herself, rich in wealth, yet still searching for love. And in that moment, she realized that Chinedu's respect was worth more than every car, every house, and every coin she owned. The stars began to shine above them. Amora leaned back and whispered, almost to herself, maybe I did not need to hide after all. Maybe love was waiting here, in the most unexpected place. Chinedu smiled faintly, his eyes still steady. The world will always see your riches, he said. But I will remember the woman who sat here with me, dressed in rags, yet richer in spirit than many. And with that, the truth no longer felt like a burden. It became the bridge that joined their hearts. Amora's heart was full of joy as she walked beside Chinedu, knowing that he had seen her truth and had not turned away. For many years, she had felt empty in her large mansion, surrounded by wealth but starved of trust. Now, for the first time in her life, she felt rich in a way that had nothing to do with money. She wanted Chinedu to see the life she had hidden from him, not as a test, but as a gift of trust. The next morning, she asked him to come with her. He was quiet but agreed. Together they walked out of the old street where they had shared bread and laughter, and Amora's driver, who had been waiting secretly nearby, came forward. Chinedu looked surprised when a sleek black car pulled up to the roadside. Amora turned to him softly. This is mine. Please, come with me. He hesitated for a moment, not because of fear, but because of the sudden change. The world he knew was filled with grease-stained hands, iron tools, and noisy streets. This car, with its shining doors and soft seats, looked like something from another universe. But when he looked at Amora's face, he saw the same calm woman who had once sat with him under the old tree. He nodded and stepped inside. The car drove smoothly to the mansion. As they entered through the tall gates, Chinedu's eyes widened. The garden stretched wide, with flowers blooming in neat rows. The mansion stood tall with bright windows and shining walls. Servants hurried to greet Amora, bowing respectfully. Chinedu felt out of place, but Amora held his hand gently. "This is my home," she said, her voice quiet. "I wanted you to see it, because I do not want to hide anything from you anymore." Chinedu looked around but then turned back to her. "It is beautiful, Amora. But I am not here for this. I am here because of you." His words warmed her heart. That evening, she showed him her world. The many cars lined up in the garage, the rooms filled with fine furniture, the hall where guests often gathered. Chinedu admired it, but his eyes always came back to her, never lost in the glitter around them. That night, he slept in a guest room, though Amora noticed he kept his humble ways, folding his clothes neatly, praying quietly before resting, and thanking the servants with respect. In the days that followed, Amora began to share her dreams with him. She told him how she had always wanted to use her wealth to do more, but loneliness had tied her spirit. "Money builds walls," she said, "but kindness builds bridges. I had wealth, but I lacked the bridge." Chinedu listened carefully. He shared his own dreams again, the same ones he had spoken of under the tree: a workshop where poor boys could learn skills, a small school where children of the streets could read and write, and a home where no child would sleep hungry. Amora felt tears as he spoke, for she knew these were not dreams born of greed, but of love. Soon, they began to work together. Amora gave support, and Chinedu gave his hands and wisdom. They opened small centers across the city, where children from the streets could eat warm meals, learn simple lessons, and sleep safely. Chinedu personally taught the boys how to repair machines and fix cars, while Amora brought teachers to guide the little ones with reading and numbers. The people of the city began to whisper. They were shocked when they learned the story, that the powerful billionaire lady had once walked the streets in rags, and that she had found kindness in the hands of a simple mechanic. Some mocked at first, saying, she could have married a prince or a businessman, yet she chose a poor man. But as they watched the work they did together, their laughter turned to respect. Amora and Chinedu walked the streets together, not in secret anymore. She was no longer afraid of showing who she was, for she knew she was loved for her soul, not her riches. The children of the streets began to call her Mother Amora, and they called Chinedu Uncle Chinedu. Together, they became a family to the lost and forgotten. One day, at a large gathering in the city hall, leaders and elders praised Amora for her new foundation. They gave her awards and called her a woman of vision. But when she stood to speak, she looked not at the crowd but at Chinedu, sitting humbly in the corner. Her voice was steady, full of peace. "You all praise me," she said, "but I am not the true hero. I only wore rags for a short time. There are many who have lived with hunger and pain all their lives. It was there, among them, that I found true love and kindness. You cannot buy kindness with gold, nor force love with power. It must be found, and it must be shared." The whole grew quiet. Some lowered their heads in shame, remembering the poor they had ignored. Others clapped, but with new understanding. And Chinedu, though shy, lifted his head with pride, not for himself, but for the truth she spoke. With time, Amora and Chinedu's bond grew stronger. They were no longer two people from different worlds, but partners walking the same path. Amora felt her emptiness fade, replaced by laughter, warmth, and the knowledge that her riches now had meaning. The mansion that once felt like a prison now echoed with the voices of children playing, the sound of hope filling the halls. The whole city was shocked, but also inspired. Newspapers wrote of the strange and beautiful story, a billionaire lady who dressed as a homeless girl, a mechanic who gave food to a stranger, and how together they changed lives. And whenever people asked Amora why she made such a choice, she would only smile and say, "True love and kindness cannot be bought, it must be found." And she had found it, not in riches or power, but in the simple act of kindness from a man who saw her heart before her name. It was the beginning of a new life, not just for her, but for all who walked the path of honesty, love, and compassion.